Africa is not a new invention. You know, I think you go back to say the oldest human remains was found in Kenya. You know, so people have been on that continent as long as every other continent or even longer. But in 21st century, you ask yourself, so how come of the 54 African nations, 54, which one is any African proud of? You know, it's been more than 60 years for most African countries' independence. So which country has gotten it together? Ghana was the first, 1957. Is Ghana the pride of Africa? Nigeria is the most populous Black nation in the world. Is Nigeria gotten it together? Kenya has had 4 presidents since independence. It's never had a civil war. It has never had a military coup. Has it gotten it together? Uganda, Tanzania, South Africa, you know, 1994, 26 years. After Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, Zuma, and then the guy you have now. Well, how is South Africa doing? Zimbabwe. Mugabe was there forever. And what did Mugabe leave behind for Zimbabwe to build on? So when we talk about Africa, I think sometimes we overextend our intellectual focus, because there are 54 African nations. There are 54, and each of those countries are different. So why don't we just focus on finding one African nation, for instance, Kenya? Let Kenya be the power for the East African bloc. You know, when Kenya is successful, their neighbors can do what? Copy from Kenya. So when you just throw in Africa all over the place, you know, then who are you really speaking about? Are you speaking about the South Sudanese, who after they are the latest country in the world, who haven't even found their footing within their own Sudanese region? Who are we talking? You're talking about the Africans of the North American region, the Egyptians, Libyans, Algerians, Moroccans, who sometimes don't even want to identify with sub-Saharan Africa. They want to identify with the people in the Middle East. So here we have COVID. You know, okay, maybe COVID is the trigger that is going to make people focus on countries. Because, I mean, what's killing Africa is the lack of strong institutions beside the politics of whatever the prime minister or the president. How strong are the institutions of governance? If you listen to most African economy, each time reference is made, he said, the World Bank says Kenya should be doing this or Nigeria should be doing that. Why can't it be the Kenya Institute of Economic Studies says Kenya should be doing this? We have universities. How successful are the universities in African countries? Is it not the same professors, maybe some of them got their education from UK, US, or globally, that go back home, and then when they have their own opinion, nobody looks at it? How viable? So if it comes to health, what do you hear? The World Health Organization says Africa. UN says Africa. IMF says Africa. These are institutions, even though they have global print, they are detached from the various daily needs of every country. So that's why we have to build our institutions stronger than the president. I mean, the president of Kenya can literally say, this is what's going to go on, and nothing happens. The parliament, the Senate, the various government agencies beside the presidency are very weak. The judiciary is weak. The financing structure is weak. You look at the African currencies. How many of those 54 currencies is a very reliable currency you can put, use as an investment vehicle? Can Uganda borrow money using the Kenyan shillings? Can Ghanaians borrow money using Naira, or Nigerians borrow money using cedis? No, we haven't. Each time we want to borrow money, where do we go? We go to the dollar, the pound, the yen, or the euro. None. 54 African countries, none of their currencies is viable for the international trade. So Post-COVID, African Union should now start looking at how do you harmonize? How do you create currency regions? East Africa, that should be one. All the East African countries should have one currency they can deal with. And then you do Central Africa, West Africa, South Africa, the southern region, so that the currency can start to trade favorably to the international ones. Trade, the entire 54 African countries, they trade less than 15%. 15% of trade between countries in Africa is the lowest in all the continents. So this is what they need to do. Governance, which in each country, the power vested or rested with the president or the prime minister is just too much. It's just too much. Because in a 24-hour day, how much time does the president have? So why does everything have to come out of the presidency? Building hospitals, building roads, taking cases to judiciary and expecting that when the judiciary makes a ruling that the president's power cannot override it. How this is, it's not that Africa doesn't have government, they don't have governance. I'm a native Nigerian. If Buhari wakes up one day and said, okay, this is what he's going to do, nobody challenges Buhari. Or if you challenge Buhari, you are wasting your time, because what is the judiciary strong? The judiciary is appointed by the president or the governors. So how are they going to rule? The constitutional court is weak. And then here's the other thing. A lot of the African professional groups, the bankers, the attorneys, the engineers are very weak. For instance, China comes in and China makes a loan to an African country. How many times has any African group, the lawyers, the engineers, demanded to see the terms and conditions of those papers? And if it does not suit the country, they challenge it internationally or domestically. Can anybody answer that question? Has any Kenyan seen any agreement, loan agreement between China or Kenya? How the money is going to be paid back? And how come the Kenyan engineers, when a contract is awarded to build a road, the Chinese bring in their labor? Why can't the Association of Kenyan Engineers sue and said, no, you can lend us the money, we're going to build it, we'll pay you back? China came in and built the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa. Isn't it a fact? And it cost $126 million to build. Here is the shameful thing that the Black race, whether they're Africans or African Americans, don't consider. $126 million to build the OAU building. If you divide 126 million by 54, how much money is it per country? Is it not 2-point-something million dollars? So does it mean the African countries could not challenge themselves, both the poor and the wealthy and the individuals come up with $126 million so that Africans can build it? The African engineers, African architects, African construction people. And we gave it to China, or they gave it to China. So the world interprets that as what are these Black people doing? We haven't taken the responsibility to challenge our own intellectual spirit, knowledge, in order for us to learn. If I keep building for you, how do you get experience on how to build? If I keep coming back to you and every time I build something for you, I give you a car, I give you a house, I give you food, what do you do as an individual? So Africans should stop that post-COVID. You're going to lend us money? If we take it on the terms and conditions that suits us. If we don't pay you, you don't come in and take over our country or a section of our country. We're going to use our indigenous domestic labor skill to build those things. If we can't, we recruit you. Companies do it. Companies do it. You go in and bring certain skill set. in order for you to learn. You know, skill can be transferred, it can be learned. But if I'm constantly doing for you, building for you, I am going to make you unskilled. Because after you build, what goes on? You have to operate, you have to maintain, you have to repair. So again, there's no magic about this COVID stuff. I mean, we have had crises before. COVID is not the world's biggest disaster we have not seen. We have had things that happened 100 years ago. But the human race is very resilient. We're going to come up with a solution. But the thing is, after the fact, you know, Kenya was the first African country to be bailed out. You know, Kenya is the first African country to be bailed out by IMF in 1975. What's happened? In 1962, 5 years after Ghana became independent, US Exim Bank that I serve on the African Advisory Committee made a loan of $100 million to Ghana, 1962. Where is Ghana today? Is it not the same Harvard? If an African goes to Harvard or Yale or Oxford and come back with the same PhD, how come when they get home, the performance is less than the same guy they went to school with who stays back in America? These are reasonable questions. 1 + 1 is 2 anywhere in the world. I don't care where you learned your education. What's the attitude and the confidence behind that knowledge? How are you able to use it to satisfy the challenges and opportunities? You know, challenges are opportunities. If you don't have roads in Kenya, those are opportunities. How do you finance it? And then financing it is your own currency. You look at the currency, the Kenyan shilling compared to the yen. If you have 1 million yen, you get 10,000 something dollars as equivalent. If a Kenyan has the same 1 million shillings, a Kenyan gets almost 11,000. So the Kenyan shillings on the exchange rate internationally is even stronger than the yen. But the Kenyan shillings is not even a currency you can borrow on. But in Japan, the yen is stronger because a Japanese can live off 1 million yen. But in Kenya, most Kenyans cannot live off 1 million shillings or even use that to finance their own infrastructure. Why is that? Interest rate. In Kenya, you have 2 choices. You know, you could borrow in a hard currency, or you could borrow in Kenyan shillings. When you borrow in Kenyan shillings, what the interest rate is it not double digit or higher? So the Kenyan government should kill that policy. You can only borrow in the shillings. And the interest rate has to, because when you drop the interest rate, when the interest rate in Kenya becomes competitive to that of the dollar or the euro or the yen, then the Kenyan shilling start to do what? Appreciate in value. And what happens? A lot of Kenyans who are abroad, who have skill set, will do what? They will go home. So here's a simple math. If in the next 5 years, Kenyan shillings goes from its present value of about $11,000, and in 5 years, it goes up to $50,000, you would have grown that economy by more than 500% by just changing the interest rate, the policy behind the monetary and the physical policies. So it's not about selling coffee. It's not about selling diamond. It's about the policies that surround your monetary and your government institutions. Okay, Kenya is a major exporter of coffee, is it not? So Starbucks buys a lot of Kenyan coffee. And when you come to America or anywhere, Starbucks is a brand. How come Kenyans cannot create a company that rivals Starbucks? They're the source of the raw material. And if a global company, for instance, in Nigeria telecommunication, MTN is the biggest telecommunication company in Nigeria. It's a South African-based company, but guess what? It's not listed on the stock exchange. So they just make money and they take it out. So one of the big problems for African countries, they allow these international companies to come in there, make money, and take it out. And when they take out the money, is a charge against your foreign reserve or a big pressure on your central bank. So what Africa needs to do after COVID is, okay, if you are an international company and you're going to operate in this, once you make a certain amount of money, let's say in Kenya, if you make $500 million, okay, equivalent, you must be listed. You must be listed on the Kenyan Stock Exchange. So that because when a company is successful and the individuals can buy shares in this company, individuals get wealthy because the company is doing well. But if they just take out their money and all they're doing is keeping employees, paying them, you're not making any money. So there's going to be a requirement to now start to list certain companies that operate in Africa that make certain amount of money to be listed on the stock exchange. That's a policy. And if not, you don't do business in that country. And then you request companies, if the project is say below $100 million, we don't want you to be there. We have the local people do those companies. So why should I come into Kenya and do $50 million project? In the sense of the local currency, it might look like a lot of money, but it's $50 million. It's not a whole lot of money. So you have to give the local people the opportunity to build their own global companies. When you allow these multinationals come, like Walmart comes in to open a shop in Kenya, what's the benefit to Kenyans? Because Walmart will not be listed on the Kenyan Stock Exchange or the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So except if Walmart is coming in there to do $20 billion, okay, fine, now you're talking. But don't come in there and spend $100 million and then you take out the profit and just hire people and your taxes are even forgiven, favorable to you. So these are the things that Africans need to start doing and demanding more of themselves and demanding more of those who come into the country to do business. It's a very simple thing. It has to be the will behind the leadership. You look at UN. 54 African countries dominate the membership roster. How many countries are in the world? 80-something nations. So Africa has the highest contingent of leaders. So how come when they go to UN, they are weak? If 54 African countries say, you know what, the UN Charter does not suit us, we want to be out. You know what? Then what does the UN have? But then they don't. They go over there, they make speeches at the General Assembly, but nothing really is happening. There is no African nation that is a member of the United Nations Council. Because when UN was formed in 1948, there was no African country that was independent. It's like joining a club. That's the charter for the membership was formed when you had no right to participate. Now that you're there and you have more of your people, more of your nations as members, you should demand a charter review and a charter change. If not, pull out. There is no university in the world an African has not attended. So how come no African country is respected? How come no African country is respected? No African leader, not the Nigerian leader, president has respect globally, not the Kenyan leader, not the South African. These are the prominent African nations, not even the Ethiopian leader. It's because the African strength has been fragmented with 54 nations, and those 54 nations are always fighting each other within themselves and then even regionally. So that's why I said collapse some of the boundaries. You're not going to physically collapse the boundaries, but you can policy-wise. So the Kenyan, the Ugandan, the Ethiopian, the Tanzanian, and all this other stuff, they start to trade amongst themselves with one currency. And then you limit what anybody foreigner that can come and invest. If you're not invest as an individual, if you're not investing $100 million, don't come. If as a company, if you're not investing a minimum of $1 billion, don't come. We can hire your skill set, but don't come. And if you start making a certain amount of money, you have to be listed. So those are the things. There's no magic to economics. Money attracts itself. What makes money useful in any economy is the policy. How come the dollar? How come the dollar is as strong as any other currency, even the stronger? It's because of the policy behind the dollar. The way Americans print the money is the way Kenyans print the money, Nigerians print the money. So how come when you put those currencies along the side, the values are lower? So if for me to earn $1, for a Kenyan, they have to work 10 times. For a Nigerian to earn an activity that's equivalent to $1, they have to work 450 times. So 1 million naira is only worth $2,000. Can you imagine that? When I left US for Nigeria, when I left Nigeria for US, 1 million naira was equivalent of almost $2 million. 33 years after, it's down to $2,000. How many of you here are financial analysts? Go calculate that ratio of change. How can you bounce back? You can't bounce back. You had $2 million 33 years ago, and today is worth $2,000. You see the shock treatment in that? And then if you want to borrow money, you're borrowing money at 25, 30%. How are you going to survive? How would you survive in such an economy? If you are a small business person, you go to a local Kenya bank, commercial bank of Kenya, and they make you a loan of 100,000 shillings, okay? And they say your interest rate is 25% annually. So you have to produce at least 75,000 shillings in order to pay them 25% interest. So 3 times your interest rate. How many business people will survive on that kind of interest rate charge? But in America, we borrow money at 2-3%. So if I'm borrowing $1 million, in a year, I'm only expected to pay what? $20-something thousand. If you borrow 1 million, the equivalent of $1 million in Kenya, how much would you pay back? It's choking you. And the raw materials that comes from Africa, a lot of it are not being processed. Start to demand that for you to export some of our raw materials and process it to sell back to us, you have to process maybe 50% of it in country before you ship it.
It's all about still being stuck in the colonial mindset. So I think that's where it comes from. Just people need to change their mindset. Until then, I mean, they'll still forever be stuck. So that's where I think the disconnect is. It's a disconnect within generations as well. So until we can accept some of the traditional ways, but also be able to accept the innovation of the new generation and come together as one, we'll forever be stuck fighting each other.
Poverty of mind is more dangerous than poverty of means. Africans have means. They just have poverty of mind because they're thinking for everybody. That's why colonization happened the way it happened. That's why even after post-independence, we are still what? Trying to figure ourselves out. We have means. 33% of raw materials that run most of the industries in the world come from Africa. 33%, a third from one single continent. And yet, no country within that continent has emerged to have the reputation. You know, what goes on with power? There are 2 things that go on with power. Or when you are a president. It's authority and influence. African leaders have authority because they can do whatever they want inside their country, but they have no influence.
The first thing that I would definitely hone in on is just history, heritage, culture. I see a lot of young people. I'm a millennial. I see a lot of millennials and a lot of Generation Z. They're trying to be so Western that they're forgetting where they came from, where they're coming from. So just as the doctor said, and I just have to say we just have the same mindset because I live in Dallas as well, so maybe it's a Texas thing. But yeah, like you have to be selfish with Africa. You have to be selfish not only with Africa, but also with your country. There's so many tribes within the country, so we can't say, well, all Nigerians are one thing. Well, no, like what tribe are you from? You know, are you Igbo? so many. So I feel the first step is just waking up the mindset of who you are, getting out of this colonial mindset of honing in, okay, I'm African, but I'm also Nigerian, but then I'm also a part of this tribe as well, and taking that with you and being proud of it, because if that was the case, you wouldn't try to be like everyone else. You wouldn't try to treat Africa like Europe, because it's not. So I say that's the first step.
Mindset is very critical. And mindset is, nobody has a degree mindset. You have to want to do it. When I came to America, people told me, I can't do this. I ran for mayor in Dallas. I'm the first Native African to run for mayor for major city in America. And I did it in less than 8 years of becoming a citizen. Yes, I didn't win, but guess what? You've given me profile, you've given me access, you've given me things that if I hadn't challenged myself, nobody says I should do it. I did it. I want to test myself. You have to test yourself as an individual, as a family, as a community, as a country. Africans haven't done it since independence. Why can't Togo? Look at Togo and the Benin Republic. They are two tiny countries. Collapse your boundaries, become one. Okay. How come Liberia and Sierra Leone and Gambia, these tiny African countries, collapse yourself? The smaller you are in size, the weaker you're going to get. Because you know what? The economy of those African countries are weak. What's the budget of Kenyan national government? Is it $30 billion? Heck no, it's not. It's not $30 billion. Then you go to Rwanda, how big is that economy? So this is how the Western thing. Let us stop giving credit to the colonial people. They have left us 50 years ago. There's a saying, a fool at 40 is a fool forever. Self-centered.
Yeah, like you can be a community, like for example, let me just take this for example, me. I'm from Dallas, Texas, but I understand that I'm also a woman of African descent. I can take both with me. We're not saying to just like strip it away. You take both with you. I mean, if we take Africa all as Africa, we're going to have those problems because everyone does things differently. And we have to accept that everyone does things differently, but still love each other. Like siblings. Everyone is different, but do we love all of our siblings? Yeah, we are still a family. So we're not saying to strip everything away. Accept your differences, but work together through those differences.
When talking of the Great Reset, which in the World Economic Forum circles has been a key topic during this COVID era, we must also think of mindset revolution. We have had so many revolutions such as digital revolution, data revolution, but with this, if you don't have an equivalent knowledge revolution, you cannot do much. And Africa needs a mindset revolution, as the first speakers have alluded to. Again, we also need to have a systems approach where we look at the interconnectedness. Of course, it is important to think of our individual countries, but we are borderless. We are in a global community. So how do we make our presence impactful and influential? And I would like to end by giving a familiar example of the giraffe. The giraffe is known for its long neck. But what we forget is that the long neck is attaining that high altitude because of long legs. The legs are also very long. So long that for the giraffe to drink water, it has to squat. So the long neck is too short to reach the waters. So it has to squat. So is the world resting on Africa, Africa's raw material, and then we just see the neck and we say, oh, America is great, Europe is great. But resting on a foundation that is supported by Africa, as I've seen here also in a chart from Regambo. So in system thinking, we must strengthen our roles as nodes, as key nodes in the centers, and also think of our bigger role in the interconnected community. And that is how we'll make our presence felt and respected. And it calls for leadership and policy harmonization.
Can we hold hands? As someone said, we need to educate one another. But more than that, we need to work with one another. Don't say I'm an engineer, so I can't work with an agriculture person, or I'm a doctor, I can't work with someone in social sciences. We need to break the walls, and we need to be able to come together so that we can build continuum of systems that are able to lift different areas up, because nothing can grow in isolation. Even if we have very good economists, or very good agriculturalists, or very good engineers, they cannot grow if the rest of the system is not working. And systematic thinking. Why can't we think about breaking our borders? Yes, we need disciplinary knowledge, but we also need to be able to work together. Because the engineer, when I look at some of the kind of engineering that has developed around food systems, it's groundbreaking. You can be able to farm 1,000 acres in about 30 minutes. You have plowed, and then you plant the seed and you go home and rest. Okay. They have moved and moved and moved. They have used the ICT now. You have drones operating the irrigation system, for example. So for us, so the agriculture person is working with the ICT person, is working with the social science person to influence how technology is accepted. But as we want to sit in our own silos and think by ourselves, and the most that we are thinking about is, how do I get rich? How can we get rich as individuals if our countries are poor? And of course, the biggest poverty after the mind is the poverty of poor food utilization. In Africa, we are wasting up to 50% of food after harvest.
Self-confidence, I was talking about adaptive and dynamic socioeconomic systems. Okay. And then I talked about investment in R&D, and this should be a continuous process. R&D in ICT infrastructure, R&D in industrial processes, R&D in social safety nets, and all sorts of things. And focusing on human capacity development. At the end of the day, what we are talking about is human capacity. Is the African population productive enough? And you know where productivity comes from? It comes from infant and young child feeding. If you don't feed your child well, they will not develop the intellectual capacity to cope with the changing and threatening world. So if your mother or your sister is not feeding their children well, and the state is silent about infant and young child feeding, and about feeding from pregnant women, we are killing future generations because we are not giving them the necessary iron, the necessary zinc, the necessary micronutrients that they need to develop brain capacity to cope with the challenges of the future. So when we talk about human capacity development, it is simple. It's about nutrition, health, and education. I think where the state seems to have been failing Africa for many years, we need societal institutions that can sustain societies in case politics fails. I don't know how this can be done, but think of a situation where the government seems to be failing to manage a situation like COVID-19, or if Ebola broke out again today, but then societal structures and institutions like religious institutions, cultural institutions, professional associations are able to take on the mantle and help the society sail through these challenges, even when at the political level there may be problems and failures. Thank you.
Well, that is some liberal platitudes. That sounds historically problematic to think that African problem is really lack of governance while they have government. The assumption is that there are some governments and they are lacking, and hence governance is not there. I tend to think differently. And while I really appreciate and in many respects agree with Ejike's points on the failures we have. The challenge we have is the analysis of that failure, and I think we are paralyzed at the level of analysis, and analyzing our failures is where the problem lies. Let me come back to the governance versus government problem. The liberal democratic lexicon has availed us that there is a world called the political, and it is up there, frozen in time and space. Most of the time it is put in the freezer. And then there is the economical. This is homo economicus, and there is a Chinese wall separating the Homo economicus from the Homo politicus. And there is another Chinese wall separating the cultural and the social. And so our lives, our understanding of the human phenomenon has been so much compartmentalized. But this is a very fairly recent thinking. We've not been thinking like that all time through humanity. This is a particular modernist way of articulating our problems. And so if we embrace it as a priori, self-evident and existing and taken for granted, there is a problem with that. And we should stop a moment and think, when did the political get divorced from the economic, from the social, and the previous speaker, I think, Rengamba is giving us a very interesting link between what goes into the fetus and the feeding of that infant into someone will be able to do algorithm and math and resolve a problem. So there is a huge interconnection between this infant feeding and the possibilities of thinking adult problems. So if we look at adult people, not in terms of how they were infants, we're missing the point. And the same is, if you look at the political as a sphere, a self-contained sphere with its own bathroom, its own kitchen, and its own living room, very much segregated from the economical, we are already missing a point. So this whole issue of country-centeredness is a very fairly heavily colonial. It is steeped into colonial thinking of Africa. I like the lady from Dallas who's telling us that when we talk about Kenya, what do we mean? Kenya is a very recent construct, which means different things to different Kenyans. So even then there is a problem. So we are not going to get closer to the solution when we say country thinking get us closer to empowerment that can translate into regionalization. How have we been thinking? We need to connect with what happened before colonial times. There was a lot of life, but we cannot just thinking about our problems 56 years ago. That's for now.
First, I want to say that I do agree with what has been said, that Africans have a problem of mindset, and that the poverty of the mind is more dangerous than the poverty of things. Because with a good mind, you can create anything that you can imagine. That's what we are told. I'm a food scientist by profession. And we are told that the number of foods that we can create with the raw material that we produce is only limited to our imagination. And therefore, if we go to the side of food, I want to say that in my research, I have tried to focus also on indigenous foods and the methods we use for preservation and processing of them. If we look at the West and even the East, that is Asia, we see that a lot of the foods that we are eating today that have built multi-million-dollar industry are indigenous foods. Think of pasta or bread. Indigenous foods of someone's culture that they have monetized and fed to the world and reculturalized us to be able to accept them and almost think that they are our own indigenous foods. Yet we have in Africa a wealth of foods that we do not utilize. So our imagination, as I said, is limited to, the utilization of food is limited to our imagination. And the other thing I would like to say is that in Africa, I've been to many African countries, our mindset is small scale. I don't know about the economists who are here who talk about economies of scale and talk about systems thinking. In Africa, we see things in small scale. If we take the case of Kenya at the present time, we are thinking of taking back our tea plantations. And when I ask the people from the areas where tea plantations are, I ask them, when we take back our tea plantations, what are you going to do with that land? Are you going to manage them to create more wealth and jobs for the Kenyans? Or what will you do with them? And the first thing that comes to their mind is that they're going to divide them into plots and sell them because people don't have land. So our thinking, we have limited our thinking to very small, tangible issues that we think we can hold, but we have not allowed our imagination live to think big and really do big things. And I think the white man has really studied us very well, as the presenter said. They have looked at our mindset and they have realized that they can manipulate us and keep us in this small box. And we are happy to be there because we want a strong man to lead us, but we don't know where we want to be led. So we cry and cry when they mess up our countries. He talked about Zimbabwe, he talked about Kenya, he talked about some countries in West Africa. What happened? If it is education, we have received education. Why have we not leveraged our learning to do what we must do to lift our countries to the next level? It is because under the colonial example system, the education was meant to create a workforce to entrench the colonial thinking of what they wanted us to do. And we have not brought ourselves out of that with our independence. So we cried for independence, but we don't know what we want the independence for. So even if we go back to saying we want governance, we want what, Africa had governance systems. Africa has indigenous knowledge. And when we share with our colleagues, our partners in the West, they utilize this to think very big things. Even this conference we are having right now, once you've documented it, you see someone just taking 1 or 2 lines and pushing it and breaking new frontiers. For us, we go back home satisfied. We have done the conference. Can we hold hands? As someone said, we need to educate one another.
I personally think it depends on a lot of things. Just for example, in the business sector, let's say you go to school, you get educated, you come back home, you want to start a business. What I found, I've been to 16 countries in Africa and talked to different people, was that it's very hard to sometimes navigate through the political channels, meaning like when you want to start a business, all the paperwork, all the politics, all the things and such. So I know from people that I talked to within the millennial circle, they said that one of their hardest things is just not being able to get their foot in the door because it's so many things. You know, you have bribes, you have corruption. So just from the business standpoint, I know that that's been one of the hardest things for them.
I mean, a lot of things being said. We probably need a whole longer time than this to address some of the issues, but they're very simple. I came to America after college in Nigeria. I was told nobody was ever going to hire me in certain things. I became the first African to be certified in real estate appraising in Texas. I was regional appraisal manager for FDIC, the federal. I wrote the policy on how to liquidate banks. Environment is an issue. I mean, confidence. Somebody can have a PhD and still don't have the confidence. See, my father said something to me. Knowledge is the attitude to express what you know confidently. Africans don't have that confidence. I have participated on so many things. Look, the first Nigerian came to America in 1918. Anybody can do that math. How many Nigerians have made it to Congress? How many Nigerians have made it to CEO of major companies, just as well as Kenyans? We pile up on degrees, we pile up on certificates, but we don't have the confidence to step out there to even do it for ourselves. Pan-Africanism, just like, what is his name? The first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah preached Pan-Africanism. What is Pan? This is Pan. Pan is bigger than the plate. You haven't taken care of the plate and you are promoting the pan. You have to start when you want to create a wave. If you throw the rock far away from you, the wave is weaker. But if you drop it closer to you, the wave is stronger and you can move further. So Africans, I'm not saying block other countries, but we need to have stronger African countries. You go to Europe, how many of them? There are 23 or 24 of them, but they have strong countries that influence the things around it. So it becomes a concentric thing. America was colonized. Don't ever forget that. America was a colonized country. What did they do? When they became independent, they changed attitudes from Europe. That's why we drive on the right-hand side of the road. England drives on the left-hand side. You look at the way we flip our power. You know, there's so many things America changed to move away from that colonial mentality. What has the Africans done? They have still remained controlled by their colonial masters. If Nigeria is having problem with Cameroon, the Nigerian Cameroon guys don't talk. The guy from Cameroon goes to Paris to get instruction from France, and then the guy from Nigeria goes to London. Talk to each other. If you think the colonial people subdivided your country into boundaries you are not comfortable with, since independence, how many African countries have collapsed their own boundaries? Collapsed it. They say, you know what? We were one tribe. We were one family. You guys came in and divided us. We're coming back together. They haven't done that. What makes economics successful is the policies behind it. It's not, you know, government, Africa have government, they don't have governance. I can challenge anybody and debate it all day long, but what I mean by governance is, in US, in Texas, for instance, the governor does not control the economy. Businesses control politics in America. In Africa, the government control businesses. So how many Kenyan construction company will go and win a multi-shilling contract without knowing the president, romancing the president, or in Nigeria? That's what I'm talking about. How are procurements done? How are policies handled? In 1995, if you lived in Dallas, if you made a phone call to 2 different area codes, you pay an international rate. I wrote to the governor and changed that policy. It became a law. It became a law that said, hey, you can't do this anymore. So how many Africans are able to engage their governments to say, these things are not there? We need to have it. In Africa, the government tells people the policy to do, not the other way around. How many legislation have been passed in Kenya because of Kenyan engineers? How many legislations have been passed in Kenya because of Kenyan bankers? How many mortgage rates issues have been dealt in Kenya because of people that say, hey, this is the sort of mortgage we have? We don't. We wait for the government to come and tell us, and then we start to scramble. Africa has volume of trade, but when you look at the taxation, how much of these things are measured, are attracted? Africans don't have a way to quantify their activities. How many Kenyans have a title to their real estate that are marketable? How many? Go back and do that study. You may have people in the urban area, in Kibula, which is the slum area. How many of those people have title to the land? How many? You can't be a successful nation when you have not gotten your real estate right, because real estate is a measure, is a quantifiable asset. You can do a survey, you can attach people's name on it. So whatever happens on that real estate can be tracked and measured. Africans get interested in the business of politics. The business of politics is my tribal man elected, is my family member elected. But in America, we are concerned about the politics of business. The politics of business is where the policies are made to decide what happens. So until the citizenry of every country in Africa engages their political class to limit what it is they do, the president of Kenya can wake up one day and say nobody should be on the street. Guess what? He can get it done, just like in Nigeria or Ghana, because nobody will challenge him. If you challenge him, you risk getting killed, or you risk getting thrown in prison. But I can say anything about Trump. I can say anything about my governor. Africa doesn't have that. So we have to let the power go to the people, and then the people that are in your government are there to serve you, not to be served. And that's a very important thing. Africans need to begin to recognize that they have the resources, they have the means. Mindset is very critical.
Well, that could take some bit of time. I'm not really sure about that, because even the people who make the decisions, like in most countries in the African continent, then, people tend to find their sense of belonging to, the tribe and such kind of thing, the local community, their ethnic orientation could also be the problem. And so even that draws us back to the concept of the state. We just, when going to vote for the sake of bringing about change, or you are voting for the sake of, our ethnic interests. So it could take some bit of time before we get to the point of, trying to functioning the idea of politics or business, not the business of politicking, which we are constantly using.
How do you think the Europeans trade among themselves? They have many languages.
Yeah, but they mostly do contracts in English or German or French. They don't like have their tribal languages in the contracts and vice versa. Same thing in America. There's many languages spoken here, but we're gonna do it in English, even though English is not our official language.
The point is, okay, this is a very interesting question, because this question takes the African from the moment of colonial times, and this is the problem. It might be very important at this moment to think historically about some of these questions. Africans, for lack of a better expression again, and I know Dr. Ejike is very much right to give us this caution. What do we mean by say Africans? But let me say, people of this continent have been in serious trade with people, including across the Indian and the Atlantic Oceans, for centuries. These people are not speaking one language. So the question is not, the question of language does not arise as a serious barrier to trade. It is the will, the economic will to reach out, which govern trades. And we've had trade. We've had trade with people who cannot basically have the same semantics, but there is trade itself is a language which help us bridge even the vocabulary. Trade develops its own lexicon. So the point is, have we looked at the bridging lexicon that can explain? Because gold has always been traded for ivory and for iron for centuries with people from Igbo. Gold came all the way from Igbo land or from Ghana, and it's made its way up to Arabia. And this is crossing over language divides, many of them. So we need to have the guts to think that trade itself is a language and it develops its own vocabulary, not to think in terms of language as important for trade. Trade as a language with its own vocabulary.
Before currency was introduced, it was barter. Okay, if I have a palm wine and you have a timber, how do we exchange? And then monetary was to come in to harmonize that. When Kenya was a colony of Britain and Nigeria and Ghana, the pound was the same value across the board. Okay, and if you're talking about historic context. Now, at the time, every colony was required to have 33% of their national savings as the exchequer. Okay, because that's how the colonial masters controlled or had influence. You know, I say, hey, this is security for whatever it is you are doing in your country. And then when Africans started becoming independent, they introduced exchange rate. Back in the 80s, what do you have? SAP, Structural Adjustment Program. That sapped Africa. So once your currency, if the Kenyan shilling is equivalent to the British pound, do you think any Kenyan will leave Kenya? If Naira was the same value as the pound, would you think most Nigerians will leave? So the Western world figured a way. Since we are no longer colonial, we are independent nations, we are going to deal with you by devaluing your currency. And the World Bank and IMF is going to come in and dictate to you how much money you need to have in foreign account as a foreign reserve. US has no foreign reserve. US is a deficit country. UK has no foreign reserve. It's a deficit country. So now that they're telling you, you have more cash.
Those who are IT experts here, you've noticed how the big data companies are using even a forum such as the one we are having to mine data so that they build trust on their side to be able to invest in Africa. So I think it's raising a very, from what I understood, a very interesting perspective that how do we also probably build a database or maybe some kind of storage of data that we can use ourselves to build trust in order for a Kenyan to trade with a Nigerian or a Ugandan without having to fear.
But trust is only earned after something has happened. So for instance, James, I said, okay, hey, look, I'm going to trade with you. And then he said, okay, you ship to me, I'll pay you. We have established trust. But you can't do it in everything. So that's why procurement culture. So that if I'm being given a contract by a city of Dallas, there's a trust they're going to pay me if I deliver. But if I'm doing a contract with the state of Nigeria, I could get it done and the governor will not pay me, because even if I sue the governor, I am not going to get paid.
Ejike, we do have examples in Kenya where cell phone companies have simply been using the history of the user's behavior to be able to make them access some loans. So I think it's more about the trust, while agreeing with you about the political interference where probably you cannot sue the governor. But I think it's very possible to track the activities of small, medium-sized companies in Africa, look at their history and build a trust momentum out of that, and address the Pan-Africanist question. And maybe it's not really language. In my view, it's more about data.
It's not language. Language, I mean, whatever the guy David said. Okay, language has always been different to many people, but they found a way to come back and harmonize. Again, that's why we have what? The contract. Every country works on contract. How did my citizenship with America is a contract. If I violate it, there's certain things I do, I'm going to be denaturalized. My residence, my home is a contract with the mortgage lender. If I violate that, if I don't pay my mortgage, there are rules to get my house foreclosed on. So I'm just saying we have to have institutions. We have to have laws and rules. This is what harmonizes people, not the tribalism. Maybe many people speak many languages, but you know what? When I'm trading with you, I'm going to say, what am I buying from you? How am I going to pay you? Am I paying you in this currency? That currency has to be agreed upon by you and I, to where you have to feel that your value is appreciated and my value is appreciated. But if I'm telling you buying a bag of coffee from Kenya is only 1 shilling, but in America I'm selling it for 10, you can ask the question. You bought it for 1 shilling for me and then you sell it for $10? Okay, what do I need to do? So trust is not in economics, okay? In economics, I mean, I'm sure many people have that. Trust is not a factor that you quantify. Confidence, you quantify. That's why they say American confidence makes the economy grow. Trust is more like a social thing. Oh yeah, do I trust you? Yes, I trust you. But you and I have to do something in order for that trust to be magnified. So let's go to the confidence. Are many Africans confident in how they are ruled?
You said 3 important things, but I think they are very loaded if we just gloss over them. You saw, let power go to the people. It's not a matter of late. It is not late. Historically, power we cannot just say, let power get to the people. It is a huge struggle. We cannot gloss over that struggle. Some of it is a very bloody, violent struggle. You said, the countries the smaller we are as a country, look at Togo. You said Togo and Benin, for example. Why not collapse those countries so that they can have geographical meaningfulness? Uganda and the UK have the same mass land,
But they have structure. They have structure.
The structure. Behind that structure, there is an entire imperial history. Gandhi says, if there was gold, I bet there is no gold on the moon, because if there were, the British could have been there. They have a whole story, 5 centuries. I'm talking about 5 centuries of going after the rest of the world because of their British Navy power. So you cannot just blanket that. You cannot just erase that whole.
No. If a man comes into my house, and is able to divide me and my wife and my kids, I don't blame the man. I blame myself for creating a condition that allowed it. We have to own ourselves. We have to own our territory. I think it has given us an intellectual laziness to always say what the British, what the American. I own my home, and I'm selling. You come into my home, you will not do what I will not allow you to do.
I'm afraid it is not just coming, Prof. I'm afraid it was a very serious rape. It was a violent coming. It was robbery.
History is not for the immature mind. If you're not mature enough, you cannot appreciate history. Jesus was crucified. There are people today still crying about Jesus getting crucified. Life has moved on. Take what you can from that history. What I'm saying is that every country is a home. Every country, let me tell you, every country is a home.
What's the country?
Straighten your home. before you look at your compound and your village. Strengthen your home. I'm saying African countries, if you wanna stay the way you are, strengthen it. I mean, why should the economy of Sweden of 11 million people or Austria be bigger than Kenya of 40 million people?
On this back and forth, I want us to be cognizant of another important fact.
As Africans, we need to focus ahead. We don't need to dwell so much in the past, because if we dwell too much in the past, we will be actually tied in a garbage that tied our forefathers.
Okay.
We need to be forward looking so that we can make Africa great again.
For me, I think Africa should be able to invest in research, especially in the area of medicine, so that we can have good medicines for COVID situations and any other issues that may arise thereafter. You know, diseases are coming up time and time, so you never know what is next. So it's very good for us to have a research that is supported by African countries.
Personally, what I feel is that we need personal development. And it's more of the attributes, the attitudes, and the mindset. And you also need to start exposing the younger generation to tools and information that will help them know that it's not just about the 844 system. It's more of what attributes do you have to give to the world, and how are you able to withstand the tough times like what you're going through, because most people are going through depression. So that, for me, it's basically about personal development.
Yeah, for me, I think we should increase the digital infrastructure. Creativity, tech is the way to go now. So increase the telemedicine, education, and basically creativity with the tech.
One, holistic human capacity development. Two, transformational leadership. Thank you.
Way forward. Africa is a very big continent, and collectively our population is very big. We can be able, as someone said, deliberate self-marketing. Can we make our things and market them within ourselves and be confident in them, just as China did, so that the world will have to come and look for us instead of us always waiting for them to solve our problems? Can we use our knowledge, skills, and ability and market our things to ourselves before we buy things from outside? We can do it.
I think as someone who returned to Africa after my PhD and was eager to participate in Africa's development, and now I feel after that years I'm spent, I think the only way we can do it is stop comparing Africa with other countries, because some of these countries build their economies through extraction, exploitation, plunder, and murder. And Africa doesn't have the opportunity to go and plunder, murder, colonize, and enslave. So Africa should stop being compared with those continents, because their economies are made of blood. We should evolve our economy along our philosophy of Ubuntu, that is humanness and solidarity, where we share in reciprocity, where we pool resources, and as envisioned by Nyerere, who was frustrated, as envisioned in the Kenya session of paper number 10 of 1965. And comparing ourselves with America, with Britain, will take us nowhere. But once we start our own development, what we want for our own people, that's the way to go. I spent many years trying to train people's skills and all that, train them marketing, but those never worked. And after that years, I threw in the towel and decided to be a babysitter. So the point is that let's stop comparing, saying America is great. We are seeing what they are doing to George Floyd and all the rest. Let's build our Africa from Anutu Ubuntu philosophy, like Desmond Tutu says, we are inextricably connected to each other, and all we need is to have enough to eat and live on. Those deaf and bladder, we leave them.
Thinking and using the principle of system thinking that says system as a cause. So before we blame external sources, let's interrogate how we have been exposing ourselves to those external forces by being vulnerable. And I see a great opportunity in education. Let's reform education to inculcate in young people 4 Ds of diligence, determination, discipline, and dignity. These ones will take us far, these 4 Ds.
On my end, I would say that we need to strengthen the informal systems, whether it's the informal economy or any other informal system, because that's where the majority of the African population, that's where they ache, they're living, that's where they survive, and generally that's how they manage to cope with circumstances of life. So once we strengthen all this kind of informal system that we are having, then we can be able to bridge that exclusivity or inclusivity gap, and then that's the way you can move forward.
So my top 3 are just education taught from an African lens, entrepreneurship and innovation, and complete the manufacturing of products from start to end in Africa.
I cannot overemphasize Mary's Kinyanjui's point. I am deeply perturbed by the framing of the question. How can we make Africa great again? What a Trumpian, very facile and even intellectually boring framing of way. It presupposes a lot, and that is where actually the problem is from where I stand. That first of all, we are loading the question with an assumption that Africa were great, and we missed the plot, second assumption, and then this is the post-COVID again to catch up with the plot. Why can't we just let Africa be to begin with? Let Africa be. Let us be, and we can, only if we can be, then can we afford to start thinking of great. This idea of thinking of great is already a deeply imperial posturing. Why should we be great? Great vis-a-vis what? We are planetary beings very much passing. And our challenges, we are contributing to more problems even than solving. Why should we be great if we are problem givers than anything? Let Africa be. Let, in the words of Mary, let us babysit our way and toil our way, not just be great again. Our way is not to be great again. For goodness sake, we cannot just afford to start dreaming great. Let's dream first be.
Look, we can solve a continental perennial issue that's been before us and after us. We can only chime in or chip in order to make a difference. I want to address the comment of David that think Trump is the one that started Make America Great Again. Sorry, here, look at this. This is Nigerian Obasanjo's campaign in 1999. He said, let's make Nigeria great again. Okay, so don't put it on Trump. Okay, I'm a politically animal. I have been involved. I'm a Trump supporter. I'm not a Republican because of Trump, just like I'm not a Catholic because of the Pope. There are certain ways we can deal with issues. I'm somebody who is self-preservation. Self-preservation is the first order of business. Anything else is playing to the gallery. My home is my country. I only let you in if I want you to come in. And when you come in, you have to do it based on my own conditions. It has nothing to do with the prior owner of the house. It has nothing to do with the color of my, I'm a Nigerian, I'm Igbo, okay? I don't deal with Nigerians in America because I didn't come to America to be a Nigerian. I have to expand my horizon. And what I'm saying for Africa, countries, 54, let's be honest, 54. Let each country begin to find the things that gives them the strength to keep going, modifying, because life is not static. After a while, you gotta make changes. So what are we willing to make changes? Is it the way we are being ruled? Is it the way we are being governed? Is it the way our bank institutions lend money to us? I mean, in all of this conversation, nobody talked about interest rate. Nobody talks about amortization. You know, can you borrow money in Kenyan shillings for 30 years as fixed interest? If you can, what is that fixed interest? How does that impact the salary of a Kenyan? Not to the rich people. Africans tend to look at their rich ones as how they are doing. I'm looking about the 95% of more Africans. It's not about comparing. You need a sewer system. You need water system. You need electricity. You need roads. Can you leave Mombasa today and get to Nairobi and do it without having to worry about the road conditions or somebody's going to... These are things that are human nature and we can fix it. So whether you want to be great again or whether you're already great and want to sustain it, the point is, look at yourself. I went to college in Nigeria, but in less than 5 years I was in America. I was testifying in Congress because I had confidence. And I believe 1 + 1 is 2 anywhere in the world. And I'm ready to prove it. I don't need a PhD. I don't need a master's degree. I don't need all of that. It is what can I learn by observation and can I adopt those things to suit my own need? Like I said, I challenge any man in the world, come and take my wife from me. You will not be able to. If you do it, I will congratulate you and then I will study what you did in order for you to come and take my wife from me. Africans need to have that mentality. Look, Indians come to Kenya and get wealthy. Chinese come to Kenya or Nigeria and get wealthy. How many Africans have been to these countries and gotten wealthy? How many?
I'd like just to take this opportunity to thank all the participants and also the heat generated from the discussion, and also to agree with David that yes, the way we frame the question probably can also make us miss the topic or miss the target of what we are looking at. And also to agree with the GK that first strengthen the molecule and then spread out to the next one. But what we've learned, especially from the COVID experience, that this molecule exists in space, and this space is shared space. So whether you're in China, India, when the virus drops there, it ends up affecting everybody. So based on these lessons that we are in a shared space, the big question then is, what's the next step forward, knowing too well that self-preservation that the GK is talking about, big powers are busy investing in that. We had a contributor from Sudan who told us there's nothing like the future is today. So I think as thought leaders, we need to come up with some steps, and I think Juma is preparing a possibility for a publication where we can put together our thoughts based on the brainstorming that has happened today and maybe propose some concrete 5 steps forward. And we've heard from different views from food, how food contributes to engineering. We've heard about the data. We've been told about currency regionalism. I think all these points, we need to look at how we bring them together so that when we we have the publication, whoever goes through it, Kenyan, Nigerian, Ugandan, can make sense out of it and be able then to build that self-preservation that Ejike is talking about and Pan-Africanism that our sister is talking about. So I really thank everybody for being with us the whole day. And as I had said in my opening remarks, the original purpose of the thought leader is normally to have these kinds of heated exchanges, and it normally works well when we are locked up in some hotel room. You sweat it out until you get the next step. But now we are sweating it out digitally, which is still super cool. And I really appreciate, thank you, Juma, and thank you, everybody.